The van was rolling downhill when Arthur Hayes reached the porch and saw the orange rectangle slapped to his window, pending transfer, vacate date, Friday. A lemon breeze drifted from the yard, the house smelled empty. His key slid in. Inside, the sound was wrong. Rugs gone, each step too loud. The piano had left a pale rectangle. Nail holes dotted the hall where photos used to smile. Arthur set his palm on the wall. "Helen," he whispered, "what did we forget?" Footsteps clattered behind him. Eric filled the doorway in a wrinkled shirt, folder under his arm. "Dad, please," Eric began. "Listen before you get upset. Naomi's taxes, the supplier mess, the boutique was cornered. They were going to sue. I sold the house. It clears everything. The buyers are flexible. You can rent back a month." Arthur kept his eyes on the sun ghost where the piano had been. "You sold your mother's house." "Our house," Eric corrected, too fast. "I'm your son. I have to fix things. Naomi said this is what a provider does." Arthur pictured Helen kneeling by the sapling the year they planted it. He had promised it would outlive them. "Did you ask me?" he said. Eric opened the folder like a shield. Papers fanned, listing agreement, escrow instructions, a notary stamp, an agent's card. "I moved fast before creditors froze our accounts. Timing mattered." "You moved," Arthur said. "I was still." He walked to the hallway, stood where faces had hung, school pictures, Helen laughing in a wide-brim hat, Eric with a gap-toothed little girl on his shoulders. The holes looked like punctuation on a sentence he didn't remember writing. "Dad, please." "It was this or court," Eric said. "Naomi's scared." "I'm scared. You can stay with us. Maya can share the office. It's temporary." "Temporary," Arthur repeated. A soft scrape came from the kitchen. Maya had been there the whole time, quiet in a hoodie, braid pulled tight. She watched her father circle, watched her grandfather's shoulders fold. Eric reached toward Arthur, then let his hand fall. "Say something," he pleaded. In the kitchen, cupboards gaped with outlines where plates had lived. He pulled a chair and sat carefully, as if sudden movement might spill what little he had left. They listened to the refrigerator hum. A lemon rolled in the bowl and tapped wood. "You were supposed to bring me the hard news," Arthur said at last. "Not take the house and bring me the echo." Eric winced. "I'll fix it. The wire hits tonight. After that, no one can touch us." Maya looked to the high cabinet above the fridge, to the dented cookie tin Helen used for recipes and small secrets. She remembered the blue folder beneath apricot jam cards, the words "do not toss," and the talk with Ms. Park next door about trusts and what people cannot sell. She crossed to Arthur, set a steady hand on his shoulder, and let it rest there like a promise. "Grandpa," Maya said, voice low and certain, "don't worry. Please." Maya's hand stayed on Arthur's shoulder a heartbeat longer, like a weight balancing a teetering shelf. He covered it with his own, calloused and warm. Eric mistook the quiet for a ceasefire. "I'll update the agent," Eric said, voice gathering speed as if speed were competence. "We'll do a rent back. You won't feel a thing. It's already handled." Arthur looked at him as though trying to place a distant relative at a funeral. "Handled," he repeated, tasting the word. Eric's phone buzzed, Naomi flashing across the cracked screen. He angled away, lowered his voice. "Yes." He's calm. "I told you it'd be okay." A beat, his jaw tightened. "Tonight? Marco can wait until tomorrow." "Naomi," I said, he swallowed, forced brightness. "It'll hit. I'm with Dad." The call ended. He straightened his folder, a man rebuilding a costume. "I'll come back after dinner," he said, kissing the air somewhere above Maya's head. "We'll pack the small stuff together." Maya's mouth barely moved. "Drive safe, Dad." When the door shut, the house sighed. Arthur sat, elbow on the table, rubbing the groove Helen's elbow had worn into the varnish over 30 summers. Outside, the lemon tree rattled in a breeze. Inside, cupboards yawned with plate rings like ghost halos. Maya pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket and typed without drama. Maya, to Ms. Park. Hi, it's Maya from next door. Sorry to bother. Did you once say our house was in some kind of trust? Dad says he sold it today. 3 dots. Then. Ms. Park, come by. Bring any papers you have. Don't sign anything else. I'll put the kettle on. Maya glanced at Arthur. Ms. Park is home. He nodded once. Your grandmother liked her for a reason. They moved slowly through the kitchen, not to disturb what remained. Arthur rinsed 2 mugs left behind by the movers, careful with the chipped rims. He worked like a man who has learned that small things can still be right. Across town, Naomi poured a splash of Prosecco into a tumbler and held it like a trophy. We are so close, she said to her reflection, practicing relief. Her phone vibrated with a block number. She didn't answer. She fluffed her hair, texted Eric, confirm wire ETA. Tonight means tonight. The reply didn't come. She pressed call. Straight to voicemail. Back at the table, Maya watched the light change, the square on the floor where the piano had lived dimming to a dull coin. She pinched the wick of the scented candle Naomi had once gifted Arthur and tossed it in the trash. It always smelled like nail polish remover, she said. Arthur huffed a sound that almost became a laugh before collapsing. Your grandmother said it gave her a headache. She said it hides cheaper smells, Maya replied, then bit her lip, as if she had said too much. She hesitated. Grandma used to keep things in the cookie tin. Recipes. Also, the blue folder. I didn't look. I just saw the corner when I reached for cinnamon last month. Arthur lifted his eyes. You saw a blue folder? Maya nodded. Label said do not toss. Grandma never labeled recipes. A soft knock. Ms. Park didn't wait for the doorbell, she knew it stuck. She stepped in with a file tote and the kind of brisk kindness that keeps people from falling apart. Gray cardigan, neat bun, eyes that missed nothing. I heard the van, she said, setting the tote down. I brought tea in my old bar number. She took in the stripped walls, the sticker glow, the lemon bowl. Okay, she exhaled, a small judge settling a case. Tell me everything you were told. Then tell me everything you weren't. Arthur spoke in simple nouns and verbs. Eric. Sold. Debts. Temporary. Maya added quiet adjectives, rushed, and signed, practiced. Ms. Park listened the way doctors listen to coughs, counting beats inside the noise. Good, she said finally. We're not late yet. She opened her tote and slid out a yellow pad. Do you have the trust? Maybe, Maya said. Cookie tin. Above the fridge. Blue. Ms. Park nodded once, as if the universe had behaved. Then Chapter 1 is Find It. Chapter 2 is Record Notice. Chapter 3 is Call Escrow before anyone moves a comma. But, she lifted a finger, we do it correctly. No accusations we can't prove. No theatrics. Paper is our fire. Arthur's throat clicked. And if there is no blue? Then we make do with the law we have, she said. But your wife was careful. I would bet my roses she planned for your son's good intentions. Maya stood on the first rung of the step stool, then the second, eyes level with the dust lip above the fridge. She didn't reach yet. She looked at Arthur. May I? He nodded. Please. Her phone buzzed, Eric again, a text lit with urgency. Dad, don't talk to anyone. Agents hate surprises. I'll handle. Another buzz from an unknown number that vibrated differently, as if the modem of the world had shifted. She put the phone face down. The house had gone blue with dusk. The lemon tree ticked against the window like glass could answer. Maya lifted onto her toes, fingers extending into shadow. Carefully, Ms. Park said softly, as if catching a plate. Edges cut. Maya felt metal under flour dust, the dented lid cool against her palm. She slid the cookie tin forward an inch, then two, the scrape loud in the hush. From the porch, a car slowed. Arthur held his breath, picturing Eric's headlights, Naomi's perfume, a stranger's heavy step. The car rolled on. Maya set the tin on the table. The lid made a tired pop. Inside, recipe cards lay like flattened butterflies, lemon tart, apricot jam, edges worn by sugar and years. Beneath them, a corner of blue waited like a quiet answer. Maya didn't lift it. Not yet. The tin gave a small metallic sigh when Maya lifted the stack of recipe cards. Beneath them, the blue folder glared up from the shadows like something that had been waiting all along. Its label, in Helen's careful script, read only 2 words, "Do not toss." Arthur touched the cover with a fingertip, as if it might vanish. For a moment, he was somewhere else, Helen at the kitchen counter, flour on her wrists, the smell of lemons and sugar rising from a mixing bowl. She had been the planner, the one who never left the garden unwatered, the bills unpaid, or the future unconsidered. Maya slid the folder closer. Grandma hid it here for a reason. Arthur opened it slowly, paper whispering. The first sheet bore the heading Hayes Family Trust. His eyes traced the words, but it was Maya who read aloud, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hand. This property shall remain in trust. Co-trustees, Arthur Hayes and Maya Hayes. No sale, transfer, or encumbrance shall be valid without consent of both trustees. Life estate reserved to Arthur Hayes. She stopped. Looked up. That means Dad couldn't sell it. Not without us. Arthur's throat closed. Relief and sorrow collided in him, leaving silence. He pressed his palm flat on the page as if to anchor it to the table. Ms. Park leaned in, scanning with sharp eyes. It's valid. I remember drafting something similar years ago. Helen asked me questions about guardianship. I didn't know she followed through. She must have gone to a colleague after. She flipped the pages until she found a notarized amendment, dated on Maya's 14th birthday. See here? Helen elevated you from successor trustee to co-trustee. She must have anticipated this exact storm. Arthur let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She always thought 2 moves ahead. Maya's shoulders straightened. So the sale isn't real? The listing exists, Ms. Park said, and escrow may be open. But once we notify them of the trust, the transaction freezes. Without both signatures, it cannot close. The money can't move. The keys can't change hands. Arthur's eyes drifted to the window where dusk pressed its face against the glass. Eric thinks the wire will clear tonight. Then we move faster, Ms. Park replied. We'll record a lease pendens, a notice of pending litigation. That alone will stop the escrow officer cold. No buyer wants property tangled in court. Maya chewed at her hoodie cuff. Dad won't understand. He'll think we're ruining him. Better ruined than robbed, Ms. Park said firmly. She slid a notepad across the table. Arthur, you'll sign a declaration. Maya, you'll email me photos of every page. I'll file it electronically. Arthur stared at the line for signature. His hands trembled, not from age but from the weight of it all. Maya reached across, laying her small hand over his. Grandpa, she left this for us. You're not betraying Dad. You're keeping her promise. The pen scratched. The paper was no longer just words, it was a shield. Outside, a car slowed again, headlights glancing off the lemon tree. This time it did not roll on. It idled, engine humming like a warning. Maya peeked through the curtain. A dark sedan. Tinted windows. Her stomach tightened. They're watching. Arthur closed the folder, the trust sealed once more. His face, usually soft with weariness, hardened. Then let them. The knock that came next was not polite. 3 hard raps against the door, each one echoing through the hollowed house. Ms. Park lifted her chin. Don't answer. We file first. Paper before panic. Arthur looked at Maya, then at the lemon tree swaying beyond the glass. He thought of Helen's last words in the hospital, keep the house standing. Keep her safe. He whispered back to the silence, I'm trying. Maya held the folder tight against her chest, as though it were more than paper, as though it were armor. The knocking came again, louder this time. And somewhere inside Arthur's fear, a flicker of defiance took root. The pounding at the door rattled the glass, then stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The sedan's engine revved, headlights washing the porch in white before it pulled away into the dark. Silence returned, heavy and waiting. Arthur stood frozen, one hand braced on the table. Maya clutched the blue folder to her chest, her pulse racing in her ears. Ms. Park, unshaken, adjusted her glasses and said evenly, that was intimidation. Nothing more. They wanted you to feel cornered. Which means we're on the right track. She powered up her old laptop, the screen glow filling the dim kitchen. Arthur, read the declaration aloud while I type. Maya, photograph each page of the trust. Angle clear. No shadows. Maya moved quickly, snapping pictures with steady hands, sending them to Ms. Park's email. Arthur's voice, though rough, carried authority as he read, I, Arthur Hayes, as co-trustee and life estate holder, object to any unauthorized transfer or sale of the Hayes family residence. His words cracked once, but he did not stop. Within minutes, Ms. Park had stitched the images into a single file and uploaded them with the declaration. She clicked submit. The county recorder's website stamped the document with a confirmation number. She turned the screen so they could see. There. Official. The trust and the lease pendants are on record. No sale can close without both of you. Arthur exhaled, long and trembling. So it's stopped? Legally, yes, Ms. Park said. Practically? Escrow doesn't know yet. That's our next call. She dialed the escrow officer on speaker. A brisk woman's voice answered, Delmar Title, this is Ms. Johnson. This is Arthur Hayes, Arthur said, his throat dry. I'm co-trustee of the Hayes Family Trust. A notice has just been recorded, number 2025 to 114,398. No sale of this property can proceed without my and my granddaughter's consent. There was a pause, followed by fast typing. One moment, sir, pages rustled. The officer's tone shifted, softer now. Yes, I see the trust. And the lease pendants just hit our system. In that case, all funds and transfer instructions are frozen. Until this is resolved, nothing moves. Arthur closed his eyes. The words felt like a rope thrown to a drowning man. Ms. Park leaned closer to the phone. Document that you were notified. Send confirmation to both trustees. Understood, Ms. Johnson replied. I'll email it immediately. I'll also inform the buyer's agent. The line clicked off. For a moment, the kitchen was utterly still. Then Maya let out a laugh, short, nervous, but real. We stopped it. We actually stopped it. Arthur looked at her, pride and sorrow braided together in his face. Your grandmother would have called this her insurance policy. Before the relief could settle, Arthur's phone buzzed. Eric's name lit the screen. He hesitated, then answered. Dad? Eric's voice was tight, almost frantic. What did you do? Naomi just got a call, the wire didn't clear. Escrow says there's a freeze? They said you called. Dad, this was supposed to save us. Marco's people are expecting money tonight. Naomi's in tears. You don't know what kind of trouble this is. Arthur cut him off, his voice low but firm. The house is not yours to sell. It never was. On the other end, Eric's breathing fractured. Please, Dad. They'll come after us. I didn't have a choice. Maya leaned in, whispering, he chose Naomi over us. Remember that. Arthur gripped the phone, eyes fixed on the lemon tree outside, swaying in the night air. Choices have consequences, Eric. And tonight, you'll face them. He hung up. The kitchen seemed to pulse with silence, the refrigerator hummed suddenly deafening. Ms. Park poured tea into 3 chipped mugs, her voice calm. "He'll come. When fear outweighs pride, he'll come. And when he does, you'll be ready." Arthur nodded slowly. For the first time in hours, he sat a little straighter. The orange sticker still glared from the window, but now it felt like a challenge, not a sentence. Maya set the blue folder in the center of the table, her hand resting on it like a seal. "We froze their money. Next, we freeze their lies." And in the silence that followed, the knock at the door earlier no longer sounded like a threat, it sounded like a preview. The house had fallen into a brittle kind of calm. Arthur and Maya sat at the kitchen table with their untouched mugs of tea. The blue folder lay between them like a weapon freshly drawn. Ms. Park had gone home for the night, promising she was only one call away. Outside, the lemon tree swayed in the moonlight, its leaves whispering against the window. Arthur's phone buzzed again. The sound seemed louder in the hollowed house. He stared at the glowing screen. Eric. He didn't want to answer, but the ringing stretched out, demanding. With a heavy breath, he slid his thumb across the screen. "Dad?" Eric's voice was different this time, not sharp, not defensive, but frantic. "It's bad. Marco's people are here. They're in the apartment. Naomi's, she's crying in the bathroom. They want the money tonight. They said if it doesn't hit, they'll take collateral. Do you understand what that means?" Arthur's jaw tightened. He didn't respond right away, and Eric filled the silence with desperation. "Dad, please. You have to call them back, undo whatever you did. Just sign it over. You can live with us, we'll make it work. Please, they're serious. I can't fix this alone." Arthur's hand gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles whitened. Across the table, Maya studied his face, her own expression unreadable. She whispered, almost inaudible, "Don't give in." Arthur closed his eyes, Helen's voice echoing in memory, "Protect the house. Protect her." Finally, he spoke, voice like carved stone. "Come here, Eric. Alone. Now." The line went silent. Then a shaky, "Okay." The call ended. Maya leaned forward, tense. "Do you trust him?" Arthur shook his head slowly. "I don't know. But I trust that fear makes a man show his true self." Minutes passed like hours. The hum of the refrigerator was broken only by the occasional whoosh of a car passing outside. Every shadow looked taller, every creak in the floor louder. Arthur stayed at the table, upright, waiting. Maya sat beside him, her hand never leaving the folder. Headlights swept across the porch. A car door slammed. Footsteps approached, hurried, uneven. Then the frantic sound of the doorknob rattling. "Dad? It's me." Eric's voice cracked. "Please, open up." Arthur rose slowly, like a man taking his place in court. He unlocked the door but did not step aside. Eric stumbled in, face pale, sweat shining on his forehead. His shirt was untucked, his tie loose, his eyes wide with panic. "They're serious," Eric gasped. "You don't understand. Marco doesn't bluff. If I don't pay him tonight," he broke off, his breath ragged. Arthur pointed to the table. "Sit." Eric dropped into the chair, glancing at Maya and the blue folder in front of her. His expression flickered, fear, guilt, then anger. "You filed something. Naomi said escrow called her, said funds are frozen. You're going to get us killed." Maya leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You were going to throw us out for her debts. For Marco. And you didn't even ask Grandpa. Who's killing who?" Eric's mouth opened, but no words came. He looked at Arthur, voice breaking. "Please, Dad. Help me. I don't care what happens to me, but Naomi, she'll be destroyed. You have to fix this." Arthur's face softened for only a second, then hardened again. "You destroyed this, Eric. Not me. Not Maya. You sold something that wasn't yours." And now you're here, not to save us, but because your lies collapsed. Eric dropped his face into his hands, shoulders shaking. The sound of his crying filled the kitchen, raw and unguarded. It was the sound of a grown man breaking down like a child. Maya sat straighter, her voice low but firm. You're crying now, Dad. But tomorrow, you'll be explaining, to us, to the police, to everyone. Tonight, the truth starts here. Arthur placed a hand on the folder, his eyes never leaving his son. No more running. You'll tell me everything. And you'll do it now. The lemon tree rustled outside, its leaves whispering against the glass, as if listening. Inside, father and son faced each other across the table where trust papers lay like a verdict waiting to be read. Eric sat hunched at the table, sweat beading on his forehead. The kitchen light above him swung slightly, its glow wobbling over his bowed head like a bare bulb in an interrogation room. The chipped mugs of tea had gone cold. The only sound was his breathing, ragged and uneven. Arthur didn't speak. He stood at the counter with his arms crossed, watching his son crumble in the same kitchen where he had once fed him pancakes and orange juice before school. Now, all that remained was the smell of dust and lemon rind. Finally, Arthur's voice broke the silence. Tell us everything. No half-truths. Not this time. Eric lifted his head, eyes red. It started with Naomi's boutique. She said the suppliers were suing, that we needed cash fast. I maxed out the cards, but it wasn't enough. Then she introduced me to Marco, said he could bridge us until things turned around. He made it sound easy. 1 loan. 1 month. But when I couldn't pay back, the interest doubled. Then doubled again. Maya sat opposite him, her small hands flat on the blue folder. Her voice was quiet, but every word cut. So you sold our house. Without asking Grandpa. Without even warning me. Eric winced. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. Naomi said the house was the only asset big enough. She told me we'd just cash out, pay Marco, and reset. She said you'd understand once it was done. Arthur's face was unreadable. Your mother understood people. She would have seen through Naomi in an instant. Eric's jaw clenched. Don't talk about her. You think she'd have wanted you to cling to this house while everything else burned? She would have wanted me to protect my wife. Arthur slammed his palm on the table, the sound sharp. Protecting your wife doesn't mean destroying your family. This isn't loyalty, Eric. It's betrayal dressed up as duty. Maya reached into her hoodie pocket, pulled out her phone, and tapped play. The room filled with Naomi's recorded voice, sharp and impatient. If Arthur doesn't sign, we'll use the power of attorney the agent mentioned. No one looks at those. Don't tell him until it's done. Eric's head snapped up, shock flickering across his face. You recorded her? Maya didn't blink. I saw her practicing Grandpa's signature. I knew something was wrong. She played the second clip, the muffled exchange with the notary, Naomi insisting Arthur was consenting by phone, the notary's hesitation, then the dull thump of a stamp. Arthur's chest tightened. Forgery. Deceit. And you went along. Eric buried his face in his hands. I didn't know she went that far. His voice cracked. I thought it was just paperwork. Arthur leaned forward, his tone colder than steel. You didn't want to know. That's worse. Eric's shoulders shook. Dad, please. Naomi said Marco doesn't wait. If I don't deliver tonight. Then you should have thought of that before you tried to sell the ground your mother planted her lemon tree in, Arthur cut in. His eyes flicked to Maya. Read him the rules. Maya opened her notebook, pages neat with her sharp handwriting. She had written them earlier, in case this moment came. She slid it across the table. The title at the top, Family Rules for Repair. Her voice was steady as she read. 1. You sign a withdrawal acknowledging you had no authority to sell this house. 2. You text Naomi and tell her it's over. 3. You stay here tonight. No leaving. 4. Tomorrow you find a lawyer. 5. You apologize to Grandpa, with words, not excuses. Arthur's eyes softened briefly as he looked at her. She had her grandmother's steadiness. Eric stared at the paper, his lips trembling. For a long moment, it seemed he might refuse. Then his hand moved, shaky, to the pen. He signed. When the ink dried, Arthur exhaled for the first time in hours. But the relief was thin, fragile. He knew Naomi would not accept the collapse quietly. And he knew Marco's shadow was still out there, waiting. The house was safe for now. But outside, the lemon tree rustled like it already knew the storm was not finished. The night deepened, pressing against the windows like a heavy hand. The house sat in silence, but the air inside felt charged, as if waiting for something to break. The blue folder still rested on the table, the ink of Eric's shaky signature drying in the lamp's yellow glow. Arthur poured water into a glass and set it in front of his son. Eric's hands trembled as he lifted it, the glass clinking against his teeth. He looked hollowed out, as though every bad choice of the last year had carved another line in his face. Arthur said nothing. Maya sat close, watching Eric the way a hawk watches something small and fragile, unsure if it will survive the night. Then Eric's phone buzzed. Loud, insistent. He flinched and turned it over. Naomi's name glared on the screen. He didn't answer. Seconds later, a new message arrived, this one from an unknown number. Wire didn't land. Last warning. 2 hours. Eric's face drained of color. He shoved the phone across the table as though it had burned him. Arthur picked it up, his eyes narrowing at the words. He slid the device back. You invited wolves to our door, he said quietly. Almost immediately, Naomi's voice message followed, the sound tinny and frantic. Eric. Escrow froze everything. They said your father filed something. Marco's furious. He said if we don't deliver tonight, they'll come here. Do something. Her voice cracked into a sob before the message cut off. Eric pressed his hands to his face. She'll never survive this. You don't know Marco. He doesn't just take money. He takes pieces of you until you're begging him to stop. Arthur's gaze hardened. And you were ready to give him this house. My wife's tree. Your daughter's inheritance. You thought that would stop him? I didn't think, Eric whispered. Maya leaned forward, her voice razor sharp. You didn't want to think. Because if you did, you'd have to admit you chose her debts over us. Eric's chest heaved. I didn't want to lose her. You already lost yourself, Arthur said. His voice was low, steady, but it cut through the room like steel. The phone buzzed again. This time Naomi's voice screamed through another message, they're at the door. Marco sent them. Eric, please, a crash echoed faintly in the background before the recording cut out. Eric stood so fast the chair scraped across the floor. I have to go. I can't let them hurt her. Arthur rose too, blocking the doorway. His voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of a father who had drawn his last line. Sit down. If you walk out that door, you walk into their hands. You'll be swallowed whole. I can't just sit here. Eric shouted, his face twisted with panic. She's my wife. Maya's voice sliced through the storm. And I'm your daughter. Look at me. Eric froze. Her eyes were wet but unflinching. You already chose her over us once. Don't do it again. Arthur's hand pressed against his son's chest, firm. We call the police. We call Ms. Park. We do this legally. If you run to Marco, you'll give him everything he wants. Eric's breath came fast, trapped between rage and fear. Finally, his shoulders slumped. He sank back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Arthur picked up the phone. We wait. The three of them sat at the table, the father, the son, the granddaughter, under one roof that had almost been stolen. Outside, the lemon tree rustled in the midnight wind. But inside the kitchen, the phone kept buzzing, Naomi's voice messages piling one after another. Each one more frantic, each one a reminder that the wolves were not gone. They were only circling, waiting for a mistake. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight, each second sharp as a drip of water in a cave. Arthur sat at the head of the table, his hands folded over the blue folder. Beside him, Maya leaned her chin into her palms, her eyes fixed on Eric, who slumped in the chair opposite. His phone lay face down between them, vibrating now and then like a restless insect. Finally, Arthur spoke. "We don't wait for wolves to decide. We call them by their names and show them the law." He nodded toward Maya. "Get Ms. Park." Maya dialed quickly. Within 10 minutes, a firm knock sounded at the door. Ms. Park entered, wrapped in her gray cardigan, a briefcase tucked under her arm. She looked like she had stepped straight out of a courtroom dream. "You've stirred the nest," she said, setting the case down. "Now we make sure the hornets sting each other, not us." She drew out forms, crisp and deliberate. "We file an elder financial abuse report tonight. Between the recordings, the trust documents, and that notary's little stunt, it's more than enough. Escrow will cooperate once the police case number exists." Arthur signed where she pointed, the pen steady now. Maya added her name as co-trustee, her small handwriting beside his bold scrawl. When she slid the paper toward Eric, his hand hovered above it, hesitant. "What is this?" he asked, voice hoarse. "A witness statement," Ms. Park replied flatly. "You acknowledge your role in Naomi's pressure. It protects you from being named the mastermind. Refuse, and the DA will happily paint you as her partner." Eric's eyes darted between them. Sweat gathered at his temples. "If I sign this, Naomi will hate me. She'll never forgive me." Arthur leaned forward, his voice low. "She already used you, Eric. Forgiveness was never part of her plan." Eric stared at the form a long moment before pressing the pen down. His signature bled across the page, shaky but final. "Good," Ms. Park said, tucking it neatly into her file. "Now, Arthur, tomorrow we'll submit a restraining order. Tonight, you sleep knowing the system is awake." As if on cue, Eric's phone buzzed again. "Naomi, this time, what did you do?" "They said the money's blocked." Marco was furious. "He wants collateral. If you don't fix this, we're both finished." Her words spilled into the kitchen like poison. Eric covered his face with both hands. "She'll never forgive me. She'll tell them everything was my idea." Maya's voice was sharper than the edge of the table. "Then let her. The truth will bury her faster than any of us could." Arthur took the phone, his voice calm but final. "No more messages tonight. You're done listening to her panic." He powered it off and slid it across the counter, out of reach. For a moment, the house grew quiet again. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the whisper of wind against the lemon tree, it all felt strangely louder, almost comforting. Eric slumped forward, head in his arms. He looked like a boy again, punished after breaking a neighbor's window, not a man caught in a storm of his own making. Arthur studied him, grief and anger coiled together in his chest. "You'll stay here tonight," Arthur said. "Spare room's still yours. In the morning, you call a lawyer. No more hiding. No more Naomi deciding for you." Eric nodded without looking up. Ms. Park packed her briefcase and paused at the door. "Be careful. Naomi won't go quietly. People like her never do." When she left, Arthur locked the door and returned to the table. The orange sticker still glared from the window, but it no longer felt like an eviction notice. It felt like an enemy banner, something to be torn down when the battle was won. Maya leaned her head against Arthur's arm. "We cut them tonight," she whispered. Arthur kissed the top of her braid. "Yes. And cuts bleed." The three of them sat together in the heavy quiet, knowing Naomi would not stop, knowing Marco's shadow still lingered. But for the first time, the house itself felt like it was fighting back. The morning came gray and cold, light spilling thinly through the bare windows. Arthur brewed coffee in the dented percolator, the bitter smell curling through the kitchen. Eric sat at the table, hair uncombed, eyes hollow. Maya spooned cereal into her bowl without eating, her gaze never leaving her father. The air was thick with words unsaid. A sharp knock rattled the door. Arthur stiffened, but it was only Miss Park, crisp as ever in a navy jacket. She carried her briefcase and a file of fresh papers. "Detective Silva wants to meet today," she said without greeting. "But first, you should see this." She slid her tablet across the table. On the screen glowed a document forwarded from an escrow clerk, a power of attorney, dated 2 weeks earlier, supposedly signed by Arthur, granting Eric full authority to sell the property. Arthur's face darkened. "That's not my hand." Maya's jaw tightened. "I told you. I saw Naomi practicing your signature." Ms. Park nodded grimly. "This is her counterattack. She thinks if she waves this paper, she can override the trust. What she doesn't know is that forgery leaves fingerprints, ink, pressure, witnesses. And now, thanks to your recordings, we can prove intent." Eric rubbed his temples. She told me the notary could handle everything. I didn't question it." His voice cracked. "I wanted to believe her." Arthur's disappointment was a weight across the table. "You closed your eyes while she stole my name." Before anyone could reply, Eric's phone, powered on again, buzzed across the table. A text from Naomi lit the screen. "I fixed everything. Meet me at the notary's office by noon. Bring Dad if you want this over." Ms. Park read it, lips tightening. She's walking into a trap she set for herself. Good. We'll let her think it's working. By midday, they were in the notary's office downtown, a beige room that smelled of ink and stale coffee. Naomi was already there, perfect hair framing a too bright smile, the forged power of attorney in her manicured hand. "Arthur," she purred, "this is just a formality. Sign here, acknowledge Eric's authority, and the buyers will close by tonight. We can all breathe again." Arthur's eyes never left hers. "You tried to erase me from my own house." Naomi's smile faltered. "I saved you. Without this, Marco will." "Enough," said another voice. Detective Silva stepped in from the hallway, badge flashing at his belt. Behind him came Ms. Park, arms folded, eyes sharp. "Ms. Blake," Silva said evenly, "we've already reviewed the supposed power of attorney. Our handwriting expert compared it against known samples. It's fraudulent." Naomi's composure cracked. "That's impossible." And, Silva continued, "the notary has admitted she never met Mr. Hayes in person. She confirms you insisted he consented by phone. That's forgery and undue influence. Both criminal." The room seemed to shrink around her. For a moment, Naomi looked as though she might faint. Then her eyes snapped to Eric. "You told them. You betrayed me." Eric couldn't meet her gaze. His silence was louder than any denial. Naomi's mask shattered. "Marco won't let this go," she hissed. "Paper won't save you." Silva stepped forward, voice firm. "Maybe not Marco. But the law will. You'll be coming with me now." As Naomi was escorted out, her heels clicking furiously against the tile, Arthur turned to Eric. His son's face was pale, drenched in regret. Maya stood between them, holding the blue folder against her chest like a shield. For the first time, Arthur felt the battle shifting. Naomi's schemes were unraveling. But her words lingered, poisonous and heavy. "Marco won't let this go." And Arthur knew she was right, the storm had only just changed shape. Detective Silva's cruiser pulled away with Naomi in the back seat, her shouts muffled by the closed window. The notary's office emptied into silence, leaving Arthur, Eric, Maya, and Ms. Park standing under the sterile hum of fluorescent lights. Arthur's chest rose and fell in slow, controlled breaths. "It's over," he said, though his voice betrayed doubt. Ms. Park shook her head. "Not yet. Naomi was a symptom. Marco is the disease. And men like him don't vanish when one pawn is taken off the board." Eric leaned against the wall, his face gray. "You don't understand," he muttered. Naomi told me Marco wasn't just a lender. He's connected. He doesn't send contracts, he sends men. If I don't pay him back, he'll collect another way. Arthur turned sharply. What other way? Eric's voice cracked. Through me. Through you. Through Maya. The words chilled the air. Maya stepped closer to her grandfather instinctively, her small hand curling around his sleeve. Ms. Park straightened her jacket. Then we find out the truth. Every lie Naomi spun was built on half-truths. Let's see what she was hiding in plain sight. Back at the house, the blue folder sat on the kitchen table like a sentinel. Maya flipped it open again, not at the trust this time, but at the loose receipts and notes tucked in the back. Look, she said, pulling out a folded sheet. It was an invoice, dated 3 months earlier, for boutique renovations Naomi had claimed were for suppliers. But at the bottom, scrawled in Marco's hand, were the words, loan, collateral pending. Arthur read it aloud. The room grew still. That's not debt, Ms. Park said flatly. That's extortion dressed as business. Eric's hands shook as he pulled out more papers Naomi had left behind, wire instructions, handwritten notes. One in particular stopped him cold. It wasn't about suppliers at all. It was a list of exit options with Naomi's neat handwriting. Transfer house cash out. Disappear before collections. Leave Eric behind. His voice broke. She was planning to run. She was never paying Marco back. Arthur sat heavily at the table, grief and fury knotting in his chest. So she used you. Used our house. And when it was done, she'd have left you with his teeth at your throat. Eric's face collapsed into his hands. I thought I was protecting her. All I did was deliver myself. Ms. Park spoke with the clipped authority of someone who had seen this pattern before. This wasn't about Naomi's boutique. It was about laundering Marco's money through a fake business. He needed assets to liquidate, and she gave him you, and nearly gave him your father. Arthur lifted his eyes, steel glinting through exhaustion. Not me. Not Maya. The line stops here. Maya pushed the blue folder toward the center, her voice clear. Grandma made sure of that. She knew something like this could happen. That's why she put me in. She didn't trust Dad. She trusted us. Eric flinched but didn't argue. Arthur leaned across the table, his gaze fixed on his son. You're going to face Marco. But not with desperation. With the law, with paper, with truth. Naomi thought paper was weak. She was wrong. Eric swallowed hard. And if Marco doesn't care about paper? Arthur glanced at the lemon tree outside, its branches trembling in the night wind. His voice was quiet, but firm. Then he'll learn what happens when he tries to uproot something planted too deep to move. The house creaked around them, as though listening. And though the trust had saved them once, they all knew the next battle would not be fought in documents alone. It would be Marco's move now, and Marco didn't play by rules. The morning after Naomi's arrest, the house was quiet in that fragile way after a storm. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, brushing the kitchen table where the blue folder still sat. Arthur poured coffee with a steadiness that belied the weight pressing on his chest. Maya sat beside him, sketching absent-mindedly in her notebook, her braid loose from the long night. Eric stumbled in from the spare room, eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled from a restless sleep. He looked younger somehow, like the boy who used to drag his blanket down the hall after nightmares. But this nightmare was of his own making. Ms. Park arrived promptly, briefcase in hand, as if she had been waiting on the porch for dawn. She set down fresh papers, her voice crisp. Naomi has agreed to a plea deal. Probation, restitution, and a restraining order. The DA will press charges against the notary. That clears your immediate danger from her. But Marco remains. Eric paled. He won't stop. He'll come for me. Arthur leaned forward, his voice heavy but calm. Then you'll face him. And you'll do it under the law's light, not in his shadows. Miss Park slid a new document across the table. A disclaimer. By signing, Eric, you forfeit any claim to this property until Maya turns 25. That ensures Naomi can never use you again to access it. It also protects Arthur. If Marco tries to circle back, the house is untouchable. Eric stared at the page. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. So I lose the house, forever? Arthur's gaze was steady. You tried to sell what wasn't yours. This is the cost. Mercy, with teeth. Maya's eyes softened, though her voice was firm. You're not losing family, Dad. You're losing leverage you should never have had. Eric blinked back tears. For a long moment, he hesitated, the pen hovering above the page. Then, with a shuddering breath, he signed. His signature looked broken, like a man finally surrendering a crown that never fit. Ms. Park tucked the paper neatly into her case. Good. That's the end of Naomi's reach. And Marco's, at least on this property. Just then, Arthur's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. You think papers protect you? Marco always collects. Arthur read it aloud. The room chilled. Maya's eyes narrowed, her hand resting protectively over the folder. He's bluffing, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Eric swallowed hard. No. That's how he talks. Direct. Cold. It means he knows the house is gone to him, so now he'll come after me. Arthur placed the phone down, his expression hardening. Then let him. You'll stand before the law this time, not in some backroom deal. If Marco comes, he'll find a wall waiting. The three of them sat in heavy silence, the house creaking around them. The lemon tree rustled outside, branches brushing against the window pane like fingers. Arthur reached across the table, laying his weathered hand over Maya's. We've cut Naomi's claws. Now we show Marco the teeth of a family that refuses to break. Maya looked between her grandfather and her father, and for the first time, she believed it. The battle with Naomi was over. The fight with Marco was only beginning. But this time, they weren't alone, and the house itself, protected by Helen's foresight and Maya's courage, stood like a fortress behind them. And Arthur, who had lost almost everything, felt the faint stirrings of something he thought was gone forever, resolve sharpened into steel. The house was still standing, but Arthur knew survival wasn't enough. He wanted closure, the kind that stitched wounds shut instead of leaving them raw. The morning after Eric signed away his claim, he and Maya sat at the kitchen table, the blue folders spread open one last time. Light from the window poured across the papers, glinting on the black ink of signatures like sunlight on a shield. Maya flipped to the very back, where loose envelopes had been tucked. She pulled out one marked in her grandmother Helen's looping script, for Maya, when you're old enough to understand. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, written years earlier but still alive with Helen's voice. If you're reading this, our house has been threatened. Arthur, I know you will protect it with everything you have. Maya, I made you co-trustee because I trust your eyes, they see what others want to ignore. This trust has one more clause: if any child of ours attempts to sell the house without consent, their inheritance is diverted to you. This home will stand, and so will you. Arthur read the words aloud, his throat thickening. Maya's eyes widened, her lips parting as the truth sank in. She knew. She wrote it all down. Eric, who had been hovering at the doorway, stepped inside. His face was pale, his voice raw. So I was never meant to inherit it. She took that from me. Arthur looked at him, steady and unflinching. No, Eric. You gave it away when you chose to cede over family. She simply prepared for it. The weight of the words broke Eric. His knees gave, and he sat heavily in the chair. For once, there was no defense left in him. Just silence. Arthur placed the letter on the table and tapped it once, firmly. This is the final word. The house belongs to those who will protect it. That's what Helen wanted. And that's what will be. Outside, the lemon tree swayed gently, as if nodding in agreement. the branches caught the light, scattering flecks of gold across the kitchen wall. Later that afternoon, Detective Silva called. Naomi had accepted her plea deal, probation, restitution, and a permanent restraining order. Marco, however, had disappeared, leaving behind only the threat of his name. But, Silva said, we've got enough to monitor him. He won't touch this family again. When the call ended, Arthur walked out to the porch. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of lemon blossoms. Maya followed, holding the letter tight against her chest. Eric lingered at the doorway, watching, uncertain if he belonged. Arthur crouched by the tree, his hand pressing gently to its bark. She planted this with her hands, he said softly. She said as long as it bore fruit, we'd never go hungry. And she was right. Even now, it's still giving. Maya slipped her hand into his. And now it's ours to protect. Arthur smiled faintly, pride shining through the grief. Ours. Eric stepped onto the porch, shoulders bowed. I don't deserve forgiveness, he admitted. Arthur studied him for a long moment. Maybe not. But you can earn it, day by day. By staying. By repairing what you broke. Eric nodded, his voice breaking. I'll try. The three of them stood together under the lemon tree, the late sunlight washing them in gold. For the first time in weeks, Arthur felt something inside him loosen, a knot untied. The house still bore scars, nail holes in the walls, dust where the piano had been, the faint outline of the orange sticker on the glass. But it was theirs. Intact. Guarded by Helen's foresight, Maya's courage, and a promise that would not be broken again. And as the lemon tree swayed in the soft evening wind, Arthur finally understood, revenge hadn't been fire or fury. It had been roots, deep, unshakable, and written into the very soil of the life they refused to surrender.